So next up, I'm delighted to introduce Marcel Beukeboom, Permanent Representative of the Netherlands to the United Nations in Rome, and Chair of the True Value of Food Initiative, a coalition from the UN Food Systems Summit. Welcome.
Oh, there's a step here that I don't need. Thank you, and thank you for introducing me. I realized that after having heard all these interventions this afternoon, reading and hearing about what has been happening over the past couple of days, that it's very hard to be here at a closing session to come up with something new. And I don't think that's the purpose of reflecting and looking back. But still, it's difficult, especially when ChatGPT is already replacing us. I'll just give it a try to give you some reflections and to give some thoughts for further action. And one thought already is when I see that the name of this session is Pivot to Action, but already here we can read this is about scaling implementation. Those are a bit contradictory. And I think this is more true because we are already in action. And that is thanks to the many great initiatives that are already taking place, several of which we have heard over the past couple of days. And actually several, and thank you, Claire, for already stealing some of my speaking notes. I will throw them away because you tell those much better than I do, because that's what's happening in practice. Looking back on these 2 days, one thing is striking, and that is the very positive atmosphere that there is in this room. And why does that stand out? That does stand out because I, as a permanent representative to the UN in Rome, to also FAO, just come out of a FAO Council last week. And I can tell you that is a little bit of the mirror image of what you have been experiencing here over the past 2 days. And what happens, upstairs in the plenary room is a bit of a reflection of what's going on in the world at the moment. There's anxiety of what's to come. There is pressure on the multilateral system, and international collaboration is not a given anymore. That is the backdrop of which we work, and that is the backdrop of to which you work as well, and actually show that there is a lot of power in joining up forces and collaborating and showing that you should keep on doing that to make a difference. So that is one point I would like to start with. Don't think this is normal what you have done over the past couple of years. You are the change makers, and keep up that spirit and that energy that brought you together here. And please take that forward, and hopefully you can leave a little bit of that in this room and in this building as well. Who else should I mention? Jen, of course. Jen and your team and all the others that made this summit a success, but have been tirelessly working on this issue for the past 10 years, I just heard. And that is something that we should not do light about as well, because that is starting at something that wasn't just more than an idea, taking it to this level and ending up in FAO, mind you, is not something that we should just take for granted. This is an accomplishment in itself. So shout out to you and your team for having accomplished that. As I was introduced, I'm standing here as the chair of the True Value of Food Initiative. I don't know whether you know what that is and why it exists. This initiative, this coalition, one should say, started at the UN Food Systems Summit 4 years ago. And you know that in a few months' time, there will be a stock take on what has happened since. And this coalition is one of the, I would almost say, most successful coalitions, not because we meet every now and then and talk to each other, but because of what is happening through its members. And I think, and I would not dare to claim any of the success of SOFA, but the fact that members of this coalition were so instrumental in bringing those 2 reports together and feeding their knowledge and their experiences in it is, again, another accomplishment that we should not underestimate. Of course, we are here in the home of food and agriculture. This does not incorporate everything, because everything that we consume should be subject to true cost accounting and true pricing and the true value of food, or the true value as a whole. But I think what we consume, it very much goes to not only to our stomachs, but also to our hearts. And I think that is what we have to touch as well, that these kinds of initiatives do matter and can make a difference. The SOFA report just mentioned, and I know you have spoken about it, you even spoke about it this afternoon, and I think Aslihan, who is right after me, if I'm not mistaken, will talk about it as well. So I just mention and repeat the 12 trillion that was a part of that, or that came out and that actually made the headlines globally. This is actually the size of what we are talking. At the same time, it's so mind-boggling that no one can really understand what that is. What is 12 trillion? I don't know. But one insight coming out of those reports was what is actually the main component in our food system that comprises those hidden costs. And the products with the highest figures are coming out of the livestock sector. No surprise to you, but in this building, not something that we speak about very openly. And that is another part of the revolution that you started, and that is that the spotlight was put on something that was hidden for a long time, livestock. And just in this very room and this very building last year, or a little bit over a year ago, there was a conference on sustainable livestock. I'm just asking you, who was there? This was a little bit, one person, yes, this was a little bit of the reaction that I was expecting. And I think someone just said it earlier today, that I think you said it, do we have the system in the room? That is a good question. In fact, we are still in separate worlds. And that is maybe one lesson or one assignment for all of us after this. Start interacting with those that need to change. It's not only about the idea, it's about, again, scaling the implementation and the action. And livestock is something that is a bit of an inconvenient truth, especially in this house. But we cannot stop at mentioning that. And perhaps the term that they used at that conference, because I was there, the term that they used for that was, we are being demonized. That is, of course, not the kind of language that we should use when we talk about changing the system or redesigning the system, because that will bring us nowhere. In the end, if you want to change the system, you have to interact with all the actors in it. So that's what I want to mention. I'm not here to finger point, not at all, because I just applauded the positive atmosphere. I should not be the party pooper at the end. Let me go a little bit to the True Value of Food initiative and the UN Food Systems Summit. In 2021, about 200 or over 200 coalitions were started, and there was a very positive atmosphere those days at the Food Systems Summit that things could indeed be changed. I think that the very first issue that was important to note about that conference was the fact that it took place, that we were able to zoom out to that systems level and really see that it is not about changing components and just fixing something under the hood, but also looking at the system as a whole, that we really have to look at that and change that as well. And the True Value of Food initiative did that. It survived because of those 200 coalitions that started. Most of them just went their separate ways or even ceased to exist. And that is something that is sad in a way, although some of those were really integrated into the bigger frame of things and not being a sideshow anymore, but really part of the change of the food system. And as the True Value of Food initiative, we are here to advocate, to help change systems, to bring information, to motivate the actors and the members of the coalition, and ultimately also to grow. So that is one call to you. If you're not part of it yet, please join. All the energy and all the knowledge that there is, we could use to actually advance the thinking around true cost accounting, true cost, true pricing, and all the terms that you have been talking about over the past couple of days. What I have to say in this context, and I'm sure that came out over these past couple of days as well, is the difference between developed and developing countries. If we look at the global food system, or if we look at the global economy as such, the first thing that strikes us and should strike us is the inequality that is inherent in the system. And if you talk about true value, you look at things that we call externalities, but this inequality is not necessarily an externality. It is almost a core feature of that system as such. And I'm not sure if we start including externalities that we are going to fix that. So more is needed, and this is not a burden upon your shoulders, but this is another one of those hidden truths, maybe inconvenient truths that need to be addressed. Again, not easy, and again, something that needs to be done in collaboration with many stakeholders, but something that we cannot ignore. Then to the part that Claire already addressed, because I was about to share a few concrete examples from the Netherlands, because that's where I'm from. I won't do that, at least I won't do that extensively. But what I would like to mention is the initiative of Rabobank. You all know Rabobank, the biggest agricultural bank in the Netherlands. I'm not sure whether this has been discussed these days. I see nodding, so again, I can be short. I want to mention two names in this context. The first one is the name of Barry Martin, who was in the board of Rabobank, and also my predecessor in this role, and Suzanne van Tilburg, who was the driving force behind the coalition and one of the reasons why it's still going strong and moving forward to the stocktake in Addis Ababa in July. To me, their involvement shows that this, in the end, is about people. It's people that make the changes in the systems. And the fact that a bank, and as customers of banks, I think most of us are, we ask our banks to be risk averse because they need to take care of our money and we want to have it back, perhaps even a little bit more than we gave them. We demand from banks that they are conservative. Yet this bank took it upon itself to write a vision for 2040 called True Value. So zooming out to that systems level again, looking at their own role in it. And the moment they started with it, acknowledging this is going to be difficult because many of the factors that we want to address and that we want to change are not ours to be influenced by us alone. And that is, I think, the first step of changing a system, having a vision, making it long-term, making a kind of a stakeholder analysis and see what your own role in the desired change can be. And what I said, this is the work of human beings. So we should really also give a shout out to the people I mentioned, but also many others in an institution like that were able to put it on the agenda of the board, get it accepted, and now being implemented. The jury is still out, of course. Maybe in 2 years' time, they decide to abolish it altogether because it doesn't work. But for the moment, we should really give them the benefit of the doubt. I mentioned the term long-term. Be mindful of that, because I think that is one of the conclusions of this summit as well. That is something that we should learn, going from the short term to the long term. Definitely not the default position of politics these days, because it is all about short-term interest. But that is something that I think we should keep on stressing, that this is important. Another thing, and this came out of an example from the Netherlands as well, and that is the implementation of true pricing in educational institutions, universities, where they started true pricing their catering services and their products in their restaurants. I won't mention the examples. The conclusion I would like to take out of it is the role of youth. And that was said by you in the reflection session right prior to this. That is really taking me to my heart. The role of youth is very important because they, and this example shows it, they are the drivers of change in many cases. And we should create a space to let that energy flow and to let those ideas come in. Notwithstanding that this is not either or, the knowledge and the energy, the influence, the network, etc., of other generations, of course, are necessary conditions for them to be involved. There are whole conferences about that, about youth participation. I won't go into that, but I think it's a very strong observation that this has to be a part of it. Then finally, I had written down the example of the bananas. Claire, you shared it very well. I won't go into that. I just use this opportunity to applaud you for the work you are doing and really taking it forward in the Netherlands, sometimes against all odds, because also in the Netherlands, a bit of a conservative wind is blowing. So changing any system asks some forward thinking and some progressive minds. And your stubbornness and influence in that is, I think, to be applauded as well. Which is a little segue to the role of government. I'm standing here not only representing this True Value of Food initiative, the other hat I'm wearing is the one of a government representative. And I think I have to be very modest here, perhaps a bit vulnerable, because what we can conclude here these days is regulation matters, enabling environment matters. The role of a government putting the example, raising the bar, creating this level playing field. And not all governments do well in that respect. And guilty as charged. Also, my government thinks it's difficult. And you referred to the motion that was just adopted in Parliament yesterday. There was another motion that even went a step further that was not adopted. So there you see it's really slow steps, and it's leadership that is needed there and bold steps to be taken to actually take us to that next level. Because the companies that we mention as examples, they need to be protected. They need to have that level playing field to be able to sustain this beyond the pilot phase. And some bold examples, and Tony Chocolonely was mentioned, keep it up because they have a very loyal customer base. But if you have a very small margin, to keep it up is really something that is difficult. Oh, one thing I have to mention as well, and I see Lisette in the room as well, that is the Global Partnership for the True Price of Food, another initiative coming out of the Netherlands, but definitely going well beyond that. And a call has just been published this week to actually fund initiatives in this respect, especially in countries of developing countries. So please talk to Lisette. She's sitting over there, and she can help you find the route towards that funding, because that is something that was mentioned by several as well. In the end, it's not only about ideas. If you talk about scaling the implementation, you sometimes need a little bit of funding as well. And this is at least one example where government tries to walk the talk and fund an initiative like this. So here we are at the end of 2 days of talking about accounting. And you're still here, and you're probably still laughing. I don't know whether that is because you have been talking about that accounting so much, or the end is near. I don't know. But it's good to see as well that this room is full and interested and engaged. It's, I think, also fair to say that this is not just about accounting. Perhaps not at all. This is not about spreadsheets and numbers. This is about making the invisible visible, to inform decision-making, to create a progressive mind, to see the system as a whole, and to look at that long term. So giving value to what really matters, that is what we are talking about here. And one reality is what we can measure, we can manage. And that is, I think, true. I just want you to remember that Al Capone was sentenced on his tax return and not for the bullets he fired. And I think that is something that we should all realize, that through this true cost accounting, through this perhaps even technical tool, we can change a lot. And that is the message I would like to leave you with. Thank you.